I'm Jessica Martinez, and I need you to freeze your credit cards right now if your parents know the numbers. What I'm about to tell you will shock you to your core. My parents just spent $99,000 on my sister's wedding using my credit card, and when I refused to pay, they called me ungrateful. My dad looked me straight in the eye and said, "Then get out of this house." I let them finish their guest list, and what happened by noon that day will blow your mind. It started with a text message at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. My phone buzzed while I was reviewing quarterly reports for my accounting firm. The notification from Chase Bank made my stomach drop. Transaction alert, $15,000 at David's Bridal has been processed on your Sapphire card. My hands started shaking as I stared at the screen. $15,000 at a bridal shop, and I wasn't getting married. My first thought was fraud. Someone had stolen my card information. But as I scrolled through my recent transactions, the truth hit me like a freight train. Vendor after vendor, catering deposits, venue payments, florist charges, all authorized with my card. All for my sister Maria's wedding that was supposedly being paid for by my parents. The total amount made me physically nauseous. $47,000 over the past 6 months. And that was just what I could see on my phone. I called my mom immediately. "Mija, we were going to tell you," she said in that sweet voice she used when she wanted something. "You know we're tight right now with your father's hours being cut. Family takes care of family." That phrase, I'd heard it my entire life, every time they needed money for something. My car insurance when I was 16, because family takes care of family. My sister's college textbooks, because family takes care of family. The down payment for their house, refinance because family takes care of family. What I didn't understand then was the psychology behind what was happening to me. According to research on family financial abuse, children who grow up in households where money is used as a tool of control develop what psychologists call financial codependency. We become addicted to providing because it's the only way we know how to express love and maintain connection. My parents had trained me from childhood to equate my worth with my willingness to pay for things. The love bombing started early. "Jessica is our smart one," my mom would tell relatives. "She's going to take care of us when we're old." "Jessica makes more money than any of us ever dreamed of," my dad would brag to his friends. They built my identity around being the family's financial savior, and I ate it up. I was special. I was needed. I was loved because I could provide. But love that comes with a price tag isn't love at all. It's a transaction disguised as affection. Every family gathering, every birthday call, every "How are you doing, Mija?" conversation eventually circled back to money. They'd start with genuine-sounding concern about my life, then slowly transition to their latest financial emergency. The pattern was so subtle, so gradual, that I didn't even notice it happening. The requests escalated over 8 years. It started with small amounts my first year out of college. "Just $200 for groceries, Mija. Your dad's check was smaller this week." Then it became monthly contributions to their mortgage when dad's hours got cut. Then it was emergency car repairs, medical bills, home improvements. Each request came with detailed explanations about why this time was different, why this was truly an emergency, why they had no other options. Looking back, I can identify 7 warning signs that I completely missed. First, they always had a crisis around the same time each month, usually when their bills were due. Second, they never provided detailed accounting of where the money went. Third, they discouraged me from talking to anyone else about our financial arrangement. Fourth, they made me feel guilty for questioning any request. Fifth, they often exaggerated the consequences of not helping. Sixth, they never had a clear repayment plan. And seventh, they consistently underestimated how much they would need, always coming back for more. The wedding planning had been going on for 18 months. My parents insisted they had it covered, that Maria's fiancé's family was contributing, that they'd been saving for years. I believed them because I wanted to believe them. When they asked for my credit card, just for the initial deposits to secure the vendors, they promised it was temporary. "We'll pay you back as soon as the CDs mature," my mom assured me. "It's just to get better rewards points anyway." But financial abuse in families rarely looks like obvious theft. It looks like love. It looks like necessity. It looks like family members who have no choice but to turn to you for help. The abusers aren't strangers in dark alleys. They're the people who raised you, who tell you they love you, who make you feel guilty for even questioning their motives. That night, staring at $15,000 in bridal shop charges, the cognitive dissonance finally cracked. My brain couldn't reconcile the people who claimed to love me with the people who were systematically destroying my financial future without my permission. I'd been so conditioned to prioritize their needs over my own financial security that I'd never even checked my credit report in months. The next morning, I pulled my full credit report and nearly vomited. My credit score had dropped from 780 to 650 in less than 2 years. The utilization on my cards was approaching dangerous levels. My debt-to-income ratio was completely shot. The down payment I'd been saving for my own house was gone, absorbed into a black hole of family emergencies, and now a wedding that wasn't even mine. But here's the thing that changed everything. My sister Maria knew exactly what was happening. I found out 3 days later when I finally confronted my parents in person. I drove to their house after work, armed with printed credit card statements and a breaking heart. My mom answered the door with that bright smile she always wore when she was about to ask for something. "Mija, what a nice surprise." "We need to talk about the wedding charges," I said, walking past her into the living room where my dad was watching television. The conversation that followed broke something fundamental inside me. My dad didn't even look away from the TV when he said, "You make good money, Jessica. Why are you being so selfish?" My mom sat down beside him and launched into a speech about family loyalty, about how ungrateful it was for me to question their decisions, about how disappointed they were in my attitude. "But I never agreed to pay for Maria's wedding," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Family takes care of family," my dad repeated, finally turning to look at me. "That's how we raised you. If you don't like it, then maybe you need to think about what kind of daughter you want to be." That's when Maria walked in from the kitchen, and I saw it in her eyes immediately. She knew. She'd known all along. "Maria," I said, "did you know Mom and Dad were using my credit cards for your wedding?" The pause before she answered told me everything. I thought, they said you wanted to help. But her voice trailed off because she couldn't even finish the lie. She knew. They all knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a temporary arrangement gone wrong. This was a coordinated effort to use my financial resources without my consent, disguised as family loyalty. The people I loved most in the world had been systematically lying to me for months, planning their deception around my own generosity. That night, everything changed. I stopped seeing them as my family and started seeing them as people who had committed financial fraud against me. I stopped feeling guilty about questioning their motives and started feeling angry about their manipulation. I stopped thinking about what kind of daughter I should be and started thinking about what kind of person I needed to become to protect myself. The next morning, I started building my case like the accountant I was trained to be. I created a spreadsheet documenting every charge, every conversation, every promise that had been broken. I screenshotted text messages, printed emails, and began recording phone calls. Texas is a one-party consent state, which meant I could legally record conversations without telling them. But I didn't want just documentation. I wanted justice. And justice required strategy. I spent the next 2 weeks conducting financial forensics on my own credit. What I discovered made the wedding charges look like pocket change. Over the past 2 years, my parents had charged $127,000 to my various credit cards. Car payments, home improvements, medical bills, vacation charges, all authorized using cards they'd asked to borrow for specific purposes, then never returned. My credit utilization was at 89% across 4 cards. My available credit was almost gone. My financial future was in ruins, and I was just discovering the extent of the damage. But what hurt most wasn't the money. It was the realization that every conversation we'd had about my career success, every proud moment they'd shared about my achievements, had been colored by their knowledge that they were undermining everything I was working for. I needed allies, and I needed them fast. The first person I called was my tia Rosa, my mom's older sister who'd always been the truth teller in our family. "Rosa," I said when she answered, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "What's wrong, mija? Have Mom and Dad asked you for money recently?" The long pause before she answered told me everything. "Jessica, I've been worried about this for years. Your parents have been telling everyone about how much money you make, about how you're helping them. I thought you knew." "Knew what?" "About the other cards, about your brother's college loans, about the money they borrowed against their house, using your information as collateral." My brother's college loans. Loans I'd never heard about, for a degree he'd never finished, at a school he'd attended, for 1 semester, 3 years ago. Loans that were apparently in my name, secured against my income, for education that never happened. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with family members who'd made poor financial decisions. I was dealing with people who had systematically committed identity theft, credit fraud, and financial abuse against me for years. The wedding was just the latest charge in a long pattern of criminal behavior disguised as family love. I hung up with Rosa and immediately called the credit card companies. "I need to report unauthorized charges," I told each customer service representative. "These charges were made by someone else using my card without permission." "Ma'am, our records show these charges were made with the physical card and the correct PIN number," the Chase representative explained. "Unless you're reporting the card stolen, these are considered authorized transactions." "What if I gave the card to someone for a specific purpose, but they used it for other things?" "Unless you can prove fraud, ma'am, you're responsible for all charges made with your card and PIN. I was trapped. Legally, I'd authorize the charges by giving them access to my cards. Ethically, they'd violated my trust and destroyed my financial stability. But proving the difference in court would be almost impossible. That's when I realized I needed to approach this differently. Instead of trying to prove they'd committed fraud, I needed to create a situation where they would expose their own deception and face natural consequences for their choices. So I developed a plan. I would let them finish planning the entire wedding. I would allow them to make every deposit, book every vendor, send every invitation. I would wait until everything was locked in and non-refundable, and then, exactly 1 week before the wedding, I would freeze all my credit cards and demand immediate repayment of the full $127,000. They could have their dream wedding if they could figure out how to pay for it themselves, but they would not have my financial future as collateral for their lies anymore. The hardest part wasn't developing the strategy. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal for the next 3 months, while they continued charging thousands of dollars for centerpieces, upgraded catering packages, and additional guest accommodations. Every notification from my credit card companies felt like a knife twist, but I documented everything and waited. I used those 3 months to build my support network. I found a therapist who specialized in family financial abuse. I consulted with 3 different attorneys about my legal options. I opened new bank accounts at a different institution and slowly moved my direct deposits and automatic payments. I researched apartments in case I needed to move quickly. Most importantly, I started telling my story to other family members, carefully, strategically, with documentation to back up every claim. My cousin Elena had always wondered why my parents seemed to have so much disposable income when my dad's hours had been cut. My uncle Roberto had been suspicious about the expensive home renovations happening during a period of supposed financial hardship. One by one, I shared the credit card statements and recorded conversations with family members who'd been asking questions, not to create drama, but to create witnesses. When the truth finally came out, I wanted people who could verify the pattern of deception, people who could confirm that this wasn't about one wedding but about years of systematic financial abuse. The wedding was scheduled for a Saturday in October. On the Sunday before, exactly 7 days out, I drove to my parents' house one final time. I walked into their house that Sunday evening with a manila folder containing 3 months of evidence and a heart that had finally turned to stone. My parents were in the living room, surrounded by wedding favors and seating charts, looking more relaxed than I'd seen them in years. They had no idea their world was about to collapse. "Jessica," my mom called out cheerfully. "Perfect timing. We're just finalizing the table arrangements. Your table is right next to the wedding party." I sat down across from them and placed the folder on the coffee table. "We need to talk." My dad glanced up from his seating chart. "If this is about the final payment to the caterer, we already took care of it yesterday. Charged it to your Discover card since the others were getting close to their limits." The casual way he said it, like he was discussing the weather, confirmed everything I'd suspected about their mindset. They genuinely believed they were entitled to my financial resources. In their minds, my success belonged to the whole family, and questioning that arrangement made me selfish. "Actually, Dad, that's exactly what we need to discuss." I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, a comprehensive breakdown of every charge they'd made to my credit cards over the past 2 years. Can you explain to me why you've charged $127,000 to my cards without my permission? The silence that followed was deafening. My mom's face went pale, and my dad's jaw tightened in the way it always did when he was about to get defensive. Permission? My mom finally said. Mija, you gave us those cards. You said family takes care of family. I gave you my cards for specific emergencies, not for 2 years of unauthorized spending, not for home renovations, vacation charges, and a wedding that was supposed to be paid for with your savings. My dad stood up abruptly. Your attitude is unacceptable, Jessica. After everything we've done for you, after raising you, feeding you, putting a roof over your head, for 18 years, this is how you repay us? This was the moment I'd been preparing for. The guilt trip that had controlled me my entire adult life. But 3 months of therapy had given me the tools to recognize manipulation when I heard it. You're right, Dad. You did raise me and feed me and put a roof over my head. That was your job as parents, but that doesn't give you the right to commit fraud against me as an adult. Fraud? My mom's voice cracked. How can you use that word about your own family? I pulled out the next set of documents, recorded transcripts of our conversations about the wedding charges. Because that's what this is. You told me you were paying for Maria's wedding. You asked to borrow my cards for initial deposits only. You promised to pay me back within 60 days. None of that was true. Their expressions shifted from defensive to panicked as they realized I'd been documenting everything. My mom started crying, not the genuine tears of remorse, but the performative crying she'd used to manipulate me since childhood. You've been recording us? My dad demanded. I've been protecting myself. And I'm glad I did, because tomorrow morning I'm freezing all my credit cards and reporting them stolen. You can't do that, my mom shrieked. The wedding is in 6 days. The vendors need their final payments. Then you better figure out how to make those payments yourselves. That's when my dad exploded. How dare you threaten this family? How dare you put your sister's wedding at risk over money? Family takes care of family, and if you can't understand that, then maybe you don't belong in this family anymore. Maybe I don't, I said quietly, standing up to leave. But I won't let you destroy my financial future to fund your lies anymore. As I reached the door, my mom called out desperately, Jessica, please, we can work this out. We can make payments. I turned back to look at her. You've had 2 years to make payments. Instead, you've charged more money. This ends now. That night, I didn't sleep. I knew the next few days would be hell, but I also knew I was finally doing what I should have done years ago, protecting myself from people who claimed to love me while systematically destroying my life. Monday morning, I called every credit card company and froze my accounts. Then I called my boss and explained that I might need to take some personal time due to a family emergency. By 10 a.m., my phone was ringing nonstop. The first call was from my mom, crying hysterically. The caterer is demanding $15,000 by Wednesday, or they're canceling the reception. You have to unfreeze the cards. I'm not unfreezing anything, I told her calmly. You created this situation. You can solve it. The second call was from Maria, screaming about how I was ruining her wedding out of spite. Everyone's going to know you destroyed my marriage before it even started. Everyone's going to know the truth about where the money came from, I corrected her. That's not my fault. By Tuesday, the panic had escalated to threats. My dad left voicemails calling me names I'd never heard him use before. My mom sent text messages saying I was dead to them, that they never wanted to see me again, that I was breaking up the family over money. But the most revealing reactions came from extended family members. My Uncle Roberto called to ask if I needed help dealing with my parents' financial problems. Jessica, we've been wondering for years how they were affording all these improvements on your dad's reduced salary. Now it makes sense. My cousin Elena texted, I'm proud of you for standing up to them. They did the same thing to my mom in the 90s. Even family friends started reaching out. Mrs. Gutierrez from down the street called to say she'd always thought something was fishy about my parents bragging about my income while asking other neighbors for small loans. The revelation created a ripple effect through our community. Other people started sharing stories about suspicious financial requests, about promises to pay back money that never materialized, about my parents' pattern of financial manipulation that went back decades. Wednesday afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was the wedding venue coordinator. Ms. Martinez, I'm calling about the Garcia Hernandez wedding, scheduled for this Saturday. We've received conflicting information about the final payment, and we need clarification about who's financially responsible for this event. What kind of conflicting information? Your parents are saying the charges should go to your credit cards, but those cards are showing as invalid. They're also saying you're the primary guarantor for all wedding expenses, but we don't have any signed agreements from you. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the opportunity to set the record straight with a neutral third party who had no emotional investment in family dynamics. I am not financially responsible for this wedding, I said clearly. I never signed any agreements, and I did not authorize my parents to use my credit information for wedding expenses. Any charges made to my cards were done without my permission. The silence on the other end of the line was telling. I see. In that case, we'll need the responsible parties to provide alternative payment arrangements by Thursday at 5 p.m., or we'll have to cancel the Saturday booking. That's between you and my parents, I said. They're the ones who booked the venue. Thursday evening, my phone exploded with calls from family members who'd received frantic messages from my parents asking for emergency loans. My tia Rosa called, laughing despite the chaos. Mija, your mother just asked me for $30,000. She said it was a family emergency and that you'd gone crazy and frozen your credit cards for no reason. What did you tell her? I told her I'd heard a different version of this story, and that maybe she should be honest about why she needs the money. That same evening, I received a text from my sister. Jessica, please call me. I need to understand what's really happening. I called her back, and for the first time in months, she sounded genuinely upset rather than angry. Jessica, I've been talking to David's mom about the wedding expenses, and the numbers don't add up. Mom and Dad told me they were paying for everything, but David's family has been writing checks directly to vendors because Mom kept saying the cards weren't working. How much has David's family paid? $43,000. They thought they were just covering their portion, but now I'm realizing they've been covering most of the wedding because our parents couldn't actually pay for anything. This was the conversation I'd been hoping for. Maria finally understanding that our parents had been lying to everyone, not just me. Maria, I've been paying for your wedding for 8 months without knowing it. They used my credit cards for almost every vendor, every deposit, every upgrade. They never intended to pay for this wedding themselves. She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and broken. Jessica, I'm so sorry. I thought... They made it sound like you were happy to help, like you wanted to contribute because you make good money. I would have been happy to contribute if they'd asked me honestly, but they lied to both of us, and now you're finding out the same way I did when the bills came due. Friday morning, Maria called me in tears. The wedding is canceled, she said. The venue, the caterer, the photographer. Everyone wants their money by tonight, or they're pulling out. David's family has already spent everything they saved, and our parents are saying they can't come up with the rest. Part of me felt terrible for my sister. She was collateral damage in a war between me and our parents, but part of me felt vindicated. The truth was finally coming out, and the consequences were falling on the people who'd created this situation. I'm sorry this happened to you, Maria, but I'm not sorry I protected myself. I know, she said quietly. I'm starting to understand what they did to you. David's mom showed me the receipts for everything they've paid for, and she's furious. She said our parents committed fraud against both our families. That afternoon, I got the call I'd been expecting. My dad's voice was cold and threatening. Jessica, you've made your point. Now unfreeze those cards and fix this mess you created. I didn't create this mess, Dad. You did when you decided to spend money that wasn't yours. That money was for family. Everything we did was for family. No, everything you did was for yourselves. You wanted to look good at Maria's wedding, and you were willing to destroy my financial future to make that happen. If you don't fix this, you're no longer our daughter. The words that would have devastated me 6 months ago now felt like liberation. If being your daughter means letting you commit fraud against me, then I guess I'm not your daughter anymore. Saturday morning, what should have been Maria's wedding day, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone was mercifully quiet. No emergency calls, no guilt trips, no crisis that required my immediate financial intervention. Instead, I went to the gym, got coffee with a friend, and spent the afternoon reading in my apartment. For the first time in years, I had a Saturday that belonged entirely to me. Sunday morning, my doorbell rang. It was Maria, still in pajamas, looking exhausted and defeated. "Can I come in?" she asked. We sat on my couch and she told me about the weekend that had just passed. How the vendors had shown up Saturday morning demanding payment. How my parents had spent Friday night calling every relative they could think of, begging for money. How David's family had held an emergency meeting and decided they couldn't afford to rescue someone else's financial irresponsibility. "David and I are going to elope next month," she said. "His parents are going to pay for a small ceremony with just immediate family. They said they can't trust our parents with any financial arrangements ever again." "I think that's smart," I told her. "Jessica, I need you to know that I didn't understand what was happening. They made it sound like you were excited to help, like you had offered to pay for things. I never would have let them do this if I'd known." I believed her. Maria had always been the baby of the family, sheltered from the darker aspects of our parents' financial manipulations. She'd grown up assuming that our parents' promises were reliable, that their claims about money were true. "I believe you," I said, "but I need you to understand that this pattern has been going on for years. The wedding wasn't the first time they've used my credit without permission." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Tia Rosa showed me some old bank statements. She said they've been doing this to family members for decades." Over the next few weeks, the full scope of my parents' financial deception came to light. My brother called from Phoenix to tell me they'd been using his Social Security number to open utility accounts. My cousin Elena discovered they'd taken out a loan using her car as collateral without her knowledge. Even my grandmother's Medicare information had been compromised when they used it to get medical services they couldn't afford. The pattern was consistent. They identified family members with good credit or financial resources, gained access to their information through family connections, and then systematically exploited that access while maintaining plausible deniability about their intentions. But the wedding cancellation had exposed their methods to multiple families at once. David's parents hired a lawyer to investigate the financial fraud. Other relatives started pulling credit reports and discovering unauthorized accounts. The community that had once admired my parents' apparent prosperity now understood the criminal behavior behind their lifestyle. The legal consequences came swiftly. The credit card companies launched fraud investigations. The wedding vendors filed civil suits for breach of contract. My parents' mortgage company discovered they'd lied about their income on recent refinancing applications. Within 3 months, their house was in foreclosure, their credit was destroyed, and they were facing potential criminal charges for identity theft and fraud. But the most satisfying consequence wasn't legal or financial, it was social. The family members and community friends who'd once criticized me for being ungrateful now understood that I'd been the victim, not the villain. The people who'd pressured me to just help family now saw the difference between helping and enabling criminal behavior. My tia Rosa organized a family meeting where multiple relatives shared their experiences with my parents' financial manipulation. We discovered that their tactics had damaged relationships throughout our extended family for years. Cousins who'd stopped speaking to each other over money disputes. Grandparents who'd died, believing their grandchildren were ungrateful for questioning financial requests. The meeting wasn't about revenge or public shaming. It was about establishing boundaries and protecting other family members from future exploitation. We created a family network where financial requests had to be made transparently, with specific terms and multiple witnesses. More importantly, we established a support system for family members who'd been financially abused. My cousin Elena started a support group for adult children dealing with financial manipulation from parents. My uncle Roberto began offering financial literacy classes at our church. The ripple effects extended beyond our family. Other community members started sharing their own stories of financial abuse. Mrs. Gutierrez organized a neighborhood watch, specifically focused on protecting elderly residents from financial exploitation by family members. 6 months after the canceled wedding, I was not only financially recovered, but financially stronger than I'd ever been. Without the constant drain of family emergencies, I was able to rebuild my emergency fund, pay down the debt my parents had accumulated, and start investing for my future. My credit score recovered to 750 within 8 months. I qualified for a mortgage and bought my own house, a small cottage with a garden where I could finally build the life I wanted without interference or manipulation. But the most profound change wasn't financial, it was emotional. I stopped feeling guilty about success. I stopped apologizing for having boundaries. I stopped explaining my financial decisions to people who'd never respected them anyway. The family I built for myself was stronger than the one I'd lost. Maria and David included me in their elopement ceremony. My tia Rosa became the mother figure I'd always needed. My cousin Elena and I started a tradition of monthly dinners where we celebrated our independence and supported each other's goals. My colleagues at work noticed the change in my stress levels and productivity. I received a promotion 6 months after the wedding incident, partly because I was finally able to focus completely on my career without constant family financial crises. I started dating again, something I'd avoided for years because I was too embarrassed to explain my family's financial demands. I met someone who respected my boundaries, supported my decisions, and understood that love doesn't come with a price tag. The most unexpected outcome was becoming a resource for other people dealing with family financial abuse. My story spread through social media and local news outlets. I started receiving messages from people all over the country who recognized their own situations in my experience. I began speaking at financial literacy workshops and family counseling centers. My message was simple: love that requires you to sacrifice your financial security isn't love. Family that threatens to disown you for protecting yourself isn't family worth keeping. The speaking engagements led to consulting work with families trying to establish healthy financial boundaries. I developed workshops on recognizing financial manipulation, protecting credit from family abuse, and building chosen families that support rather than exploit success. A year after that terrible Sunday evening when I froze my credit cards, I received an unexpected phone call. It was my mother. "Jessica," she said, her voice smaller and more defeated than I'd ever heard it. "I need to apologize to you. I didn't say anything. I'd learned that responding too quickly to parental overtures often led to manipulation attempts. The therapy we've been court-ordered to attend has helped me understand what we did to you. We weren't just asking for help. We were stealing from you. We were lying to you. We were destroying your future to fund our present." "Yes," I said simply, "you were. I don't expect you to forgive us. I don't expect you to have a relationship with us again. But I needed you to know that we finally understand what we did, and we're sorry." And the apology felt genuine, but it also felt too late. The damage wasn't just financial, it was relational, emotional, and psychological. Years of therapy might help them understand their behavior, but it couldn't undo the trauma they'd caused or rebuild the trust they'd destroyed. "I appreciate you saying that," I told her, "but I'm not ready for a relationship with you or Dad. Maybe someday, but not now." "I understand," she said. "I just wanted you to know that you were right to protect yourself. You were right to stop us. We couldn't stop ourselves." That conversation gave me the closure I hadn't realized I needed. Not forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that yet, but acknowledgement that my actions had been necessary and justified. Today, 3 years later, I live in a beautiful house that I own completely. I have a career that fulfills me, relationships that nourish me, and financial security that nobody can take away. I have a chosen family of people who celebrate my success instead of exploiting it. I think about that terrible Sunday evening sometimes, the night I walked into my parents' house with a folder full of evidence and a heart full of determination. It was the night I stopped being a victim and became my own advocate. It was the night I chose my future over their comfort. The girl who used to think family obligation meant financial sacrifice is gone. In her place is a woman who understands that real love supports your growth instead of stunting it, that real family protects your future instead of jeopardizing it, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone else's destructive behavior. My sister Maria sends me pictures from her real wedding, the small, intimate ceremony where she married the man she loved, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about their happiness, rather than their ability to fund other people's dreams. She looks radiant in those pictures, free from the weight of family financial drama. "Thank you," she texted me after her honeymoon, "for showing me what real family boundaries look like, for teaching me that love doesn't come with invoices attached." That message meant more to me than any apology from my parents ever could, because it meant that the cycle was broken, that the next generation would understand the difference between helping family and being exploited by family. I kept the manila folder from that Sunday evening, not as a reminder of the pain, but as evidence of my strength. It sits in my home office now, next to awards from my job, pictures of my chosen family, and documents for the house I bought with money I earned and kept for myself. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the way things ended with my parents. The answer is no. I regret that it took me so long to protect myself. I regret that I enabled their behavior for years. I regret that other family members were hurt by their financial schemes. But I don't regret choosing myself. I don't regret establishing boundaries. I don't regret refusing to fund lies with my future. Because the truth is, family doesn't take care of family by destroying each other. Real family takes care of each other by supporting independence, celebrating success, and respecting boundaries. Real family doesn't ask you to choose between love and financial security. And if the people who raised you can't understand that difference, then the healthiest thing you can do is build a new family, one that knows the difference between helping and hurting, between love and exploitation, between family loyalty and financial abuse. That's the lesson I learned at 28 years old, sitting across from my parents with a folder full of evidence and a heart full of determination. Sometimes saving your family means saving yourself from your family, and sometimes that's the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved.